Please join me in welcoming to the stage Tracy Van Houten.
Well, thank you, Monica, for that kind introduction. And I think our MCs are doing an absolutely fabulous job today. I know I was just barely discovering my voice in high school. And here they are already putting their advocacy into action, and I just applaud you one more time for doing this excellent job. Well, I am so happy to be here on this lovely, perfect day. We thought maybe a little rain, maybe too hot. Nope, just perfect. And I'm so excited to share with you all my journey as a real-life rocket scientist here in the flesh. And to celebrate all the excellent work of Girls Inc. of Carpinteria. I really resonate. I love that it's up there on the back wall, your motto of inspiring all girls to be strong, smart, and bold. Inserting that small word in front of girls, all girls, clearly indicates your dedication to inclusion. And as far as qualities go, boldness is one of my favorites to find in girls and women. Our motto where I work at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or JPL, similarly celebrates boldness. It's dare mighty things. It's a pretty good motto. I'm currently daring mighty things on the Europa Clipper mission. Europa is one of Jupiter's moons. It has a lot of moons. And it's a destination in our solar system that's most likely to harbor life. As Europa travels in its slightly elliptical orbit around Jupiter, Jupiter's massive gravitational pull causes Europa to compress and stretch, depending on where it is within the orbit. This process, called tidal flexion, keeps the interior of Europa hot and geologically active. So though there is an ice shell covering Europa's exterior, scientists have long predicted that there's a presence of a liquid water ocean beneath the icy crust. And there's more salt water in that ocean than all of the water here on Earth. And just like we continue to discover very rare life at the bottom of our ocean at the hydrothermal vents, Europa similarly could have the same sort of processes going on with strange life that we could have never predicted there at the bottom of the ocean. So that's what makes it a really interesting destination. We've been trying to go to Europa for almost 3 decades. And so we are now finally just 2.5 years out from our planned launch in October of 2024. And in fact, we've just passed a huge milestone. So 2 weeks ago, we started to receive the first pieces of the actual spacecraft hardware into our assembly facility, and we've just started to build the spacecraft itself that will launch in just a few years. And for me, it's getting really real, right? This is my space baby. This will actually be my 4th space baby. I have human babies too, but the space babies, they are what keep me going and keep me up at night. Okay, the kids do that too. So for my role on the project, I'm the system test bed lead engineer, where I manage the test facility and the team, responsible for running hundreds of tests to investigate the interactions that we have between the flight hardware and the flight software before we go. We do it on a simulated test venue before we go and actually test it on the real spacecraft because we don't want to break anything. And the whole point of testing things is to try and break things, find out all the things that are wrong before you launch it, and then you can never touch it again. So I do look forward to inviting all the Eureka program participants from here. Come down to JPL. We'll do a great tour of the test facilities for Europa once JPL has opened up a little bit more post-pandemic. So Europa really has my heart, but I've actually spent the majority of my career on Mars missions. So the 2 that you've likely heard of are the Curiosity and Perseverance Mars rovers. And though I love, excuse me, I'm missing a page. There it is. So in the 9 years I've been on Curiosity and Perseverance, I had my longest role as the project verification and validation lead engineer. And that mouthful just means that I was responsible for overseeing the planning and execution of Perseverance's test program. Now, Curiosity, Perseverance, these are really great names for space missions. They were actually named by elementary and middle school students. NASA runs a contest, and they get to name the rovers, and it's a big fun thing. We received the name Perseverance on March 5th of 2020, and as all of us were joking about, it's like now we have to learn how to spell perseverance. little did we know how much that perseverance would really come into play when a week later everything shut down and we still had to make it to the launch pad on time a few months later. So I love these words, curiosity and perseverance. They're great names for space missions, but they go far beyond those flashy names. And to me, they are really important qualities that girls and all of us who support them, all of you here today, need to embody if we're going to make history within the STEM fields and to make it a more fair and equitable path for our girls. Curiosity is all about asking the big questions. In my field, we try to answer the expansive outward questions, right? What's out there? Where did we come from? Is there life anywhere else in the universe? What impact are we having on our planet? Are there other planets we could go to if we mess this one up? I'm glad you all reacted that way to it. So far, no. So just so we all know. But curiosity is also about looking inward. It's asking yourself, what can I personally achieve in my lifetime to improve my community and solve the problems I see around me? A key motivator young women cite when asked why they've chosen a career in STEM is, I want to help people. Asking these big outward or inward questions is a great start. And the beauty of a STEM education, and that word has already been thrown around a lot here today, but science, technology, engineering, and math, just for anybody who hasn't heard that frequently. The beauty of a STEM education and opportunities like you all provide here at Girls Inc. Is that you're encouraging the curiosity to ask the questions, but then also establishing that problem-solving mindset, and then providing that safe space for the girls to jump in and solve the problems themselves. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen any damsels in distress around here today. Unfortunately, not every problem that needs solving is going to be accompanied by the resources or environment that you need to feel comfortable to solve the issue. That's where perseverance comes in. The path to accomplishing anything worth doing in this life is always paved with countless setbacks as you navigate the system set up to maintain the status quo. Perseverance, grit, boldness, these are all needed to achieve progress, whether you're solving a technical issue or a social justice one. I would love to tell you that being a woman in STEM has been easy, that it doesn't require any special grit or determination to make it through. Unfortunately, that hasn't been my experience, and it hasn't been the experience of most of the women that I've mentored. Do I have an incredibly exciting career? Is it rewarding? Do I love my job? Absolutely. It's my dream job. I thought it was going to be my dream job when I was 15 and decided to do it. Lived up to it all these 2 decades later. But trust me, there are many, many, many of us, and all of you here today are doing this as well, who are here to make the STEM fields a more inclusive and welcoming environment. So hopefully by the time all the girls are coming out of these programs, they will find that they don't need to use quite so much perseverance just to get through, and they can use that perseverance totally towards all the big technical problems that they're solving. Now, I love and I embrace our Dare Mighty Things motto at JPL. And once you hear the full context of the Theodore Roosevelt quote it came from, you'll see where the perseverance part comes in. Here's the full quote. Far better is it to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by a failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory nor defeat. So the opposite of daring mighty things is not failure, it's apathy. It's sticking with the status quo. It's looking at the abysmal percentage of women in the STEM fields and saying, it's getting better, don't you think? I want to work in an environment that prides itself on being radically fair, radically inclusive and equitable. A place where people choose to dare mighty things in all aspects, not just the flashy missions that we design, but in the mundane, like people management. Over the years, I've frequently challenged my managers and my fellow technical leads to dare mighty things within our hiring practices and gender equity goals. It's for these reasons I consider myself a STEMinist, an advocate for women and those historically excluded from the STEM fields. STEMinism is about putting the belief that representation matters into action. And though no one had yet coined that great term, STEMinist, when I was growing up, I've been a lifelong feminist and embraced STEMinism while still in high school, where after deciding what type of engineer I wanted to be, aerospace, I had one big nagging question left from all of my research. Where are all the women? Well, the answer was decidedly not in aerospace, where the percentage of women hovered around 7 to 8% in the late 90s when I was deciding what to study. I'm not sure I could have attended a Women of Inspiration luncheon at that time and would have seen a woman engineer speaker. In fact, I don't even remember meeting a woman engineer until 3 years after I had decided to become one when I finally got to college. I decided there at 15 that I would be one more, and that might actually move the needle on the percentage. I became committed to sharing engineering and the joys of space exploration far and wide, especially to those who have been historically excluded from the field. In the last 2 decades, I've spent pouring my heart into STEM outreach events, as well as encouraging the hiring and mentoring of more than 100 intern through mid-career folks at JPL. All of this to increase the pipeline and to keep the retention of our top talent and diversity. Though the number of, the percentage of women in aerospace is still hovering a little below 20%, JPL does have a higher percentage than the national average, and it has the highest percentage of women of any NASA center. So I do hope that my efforts, I don't take credit for that, but I do hope that my efforts have contributed to those statistics moving in the right direction. And I look forward to seeing the fruits of the next, much more diverse generation of engineering leaders. Now, I hope that many of the girls in this program, currently in your Eureka program, will become part of that next generation of engineering leaders. And just if anybody's doing the math, we launched to Europa in 2.5 years. It then takes 5.5 years to get to Jupiter, and it then takes 4 years to do the science mission, and then our missions always go on and on after that. So, plenty of time still for all the girls in high school in Eureka to come on over to Europa, be operators of the spacecraft in the future. So in 2017, another aspect of my STEMinism and the importance of representation drove me to run for a seat in Congress. At that time, less than 2% of Congress was engineers. We'd never had a woman engineer. Since that time, we've actually elected 2, which I am thrilled about. And I was deeply concerned about the growing political polarization in our country, and I thought I was seeing a war on science that I didn't want to keep having go on and on without being checked by those of us who are actually in the STEM fields. And for almost any problem, I believe women are the solution. If I wanted to see more women, more engineers, more moms, more people from younger generations in our government, then I better be willing to be the change I wanted to see. Armed with a "if not me, then who" attitude, coupled with my collaborative systems engineering skill set, I jumped into a crowded race and built a campaign team of primarily women. Side note, better percentages in politics with women, but still very rare to see candidates, electeds, campaign staff, etc., who are women in the political arena as well. So our team certainly stood out from the crowd. Lots of people from around the country got excited about my candidacy and helped out. And I didn't win, spoiler alert. I'm only coming to you from Pasadena, not Washington, D.C. today. But we certainly advanced the conversation in a big way about people in STEM becoming engaged in public service and activism. And I continue to strongly support and mentor women in STEM candidates, both locally and around the country. So I invite each of you here today to join me as fellow STEMinists. And I want to leave you with a few ideas and stories from my STEMinist journey so that you can adapt some of these ideas within your own spheres of influence. I can already tell just by listening to the conversations and the presentation, you all have pretty big spheres of influence. So please choose to use those for STEMinism as well. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist, you don't even have to be in the STEM fields, and you don't have to be a woman to be a STEMinist. You can still be an effective STEMinist. So here's some things I'd like you to think about. How are you talking to girls? How are you inspiring curiosity in them? How are you encouraging a problem-solving mindset? The world would have us believe that people in STEM are nerdy white guys in lab coats. I'd love you to read up on alternative folks in STEM, role models, and push that narrative to the younger people in your life. When you're talking to little girls, instead of, wow, you look like a princess, look for opportunities to say things like, wow, you really think like an engineer. You're a problem solver. And ladies, this one is specifically for you. I never want to hear the words, I'm no good at math, come out of your mouth. You need to encourage young girls to know that math is for them too. Make inclusive spaces where STEM opportunities and successes are celebrated and encouraged and explored. You're already doing that. Look at this amazing space around you. I am actually blown away, and I'm excited to get a chance to tour the STEM lab. There's lots of ways to make inclusive spaces. For me, what that means is that I consistently wear LGBTQ ally pin. It goes on my badge every day that I'm at work. My office is filled with inclusive signage, language, and I will specifically say, and in my email signature, it includes pronouns and identifies me as a place that can be used as a safe space if anybody needs an office to go to or something like that. And in fact, after many, many years of having those pronouns sitting in my email signature, it says, my pronouns are she, hers, what are yours? One of my managers, who at the time was leading a few hundred people, said, you know, Tracy, I've seen that in your email signature for 5 years, and I never thought that was something I could put in my email signature, but I finally decided I'm just going to do it and see how it goes. And a month later, he actually was promoted and became the lead of 3,000 people. So you can imagine the impact it has when those 3,000 engineers and scientists see, I'm going to call it a little bit out, white male manager, very high up, showing inclusive practices. It's made a huge difference in the culture around inclusion at the laboratory. The next thing, you always want to have your diversity, equity, and inclusion ask ready. And so what that means is that whenever you go to a meeting or you have an opportunity, that elevator pitch, I'm sure you girls have learned about an elevator pitch, right? They must have talked about elevator pitches around here. You always want to have your ask ready. For me, that means that I've identified myself who's somebody who's always going to ask the nagging question about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Of course I have technical questions, but that's not what I actually spend my time on when I have the opportunity. So my asks are something like, okay, we're at a big meeting in front of a large group of our section. Managers, what are you doing to ensure that there is no wage gap in our section? How are you handling that? Are you sure that we don't have one? What data are you looking into? What research have you done? How can you promise to this section that there is no wage gap? At a visionary meeting, we had five men, the heads of the lab at the time, sitting up in front of us. And so I got up in front of that audience of many hundreds of people and said, what are each of you doing to ensure that in 2025, which was the vision that we were talking about, our leadership looks a little different than you? That one got a lot of text messages after I asked that one. And JPL just announced a few months ago that we will actually have our first woman director coming in just another month. I encourage each of you to strive to build teams that look much more like the population of California than necessarily the boardroom or the space that you're used to walking into. The ways that we can do that can also often be hard and require perseverance. I've been on a panel that selects leaders for a mentoring program, and these are supposed to be the future leaders of our organization. And multiple times when we've gone through candidates, we've interviewed 40 candidates, 50 candidates. The candidates we've interviewed haven't really looked like the population of Los Angeles County or Pasadena or California, right? They've looked like what you would think engineering leaders might look like. And so I've had to multiple times say, I refuse to cast a vote until we have a candidate pool that is reflective of the population of our state. And that has gotten uncomfortable. It's gotten really uncomfortable. There have been years where we've had no black candidates. There have been years where we haven't had any Latina. And that to me is unacceptable. So by withholding my vote, I stop the process until we can get an actual representative candidate pool. And lo and behold, when the people are in the room in the candidate pool, those who are selected, when based on merit and qualification, are incredibly more diverse than what you might have been left with if you're just relying on a candidate pool drawn from our traditional ways of selecting people and recommending them for leadership. Lastly, I want to encourage you to find ways to open doors and remove barriers for other people. That means, I'll give you an example from my time at JPL. When I was on an earth science mission called SMAP, it was a mission where we were doing large system tests, testing out the space vehicle, trying to run it through its paces, a day in the life, a scenario. And I saw that nobody was leading and stepping up to take the lead on those tests. And so I went into my boss's office and said, you really need somebody to lead those tests, and I think it should be me. And so that's how I kind of leapt into a job that was much above my current capabilities at the time, but you just do it until you make it. That's what that perseverance is all about. But then the next time I had an opportunity and saw that same need, I was able to pull along 3 additional people and say, boss, manager, we don't have anybody running these tests, and I have some great suggestions for you. So you should always have that list handy of who you're going to be suggesting to bring up the ladder with you, right? And place them into those roles that are going to provide the springboards for their career steps as well. And finally, find ways to advocate here in your community. You obviously are all doing this already. But there are hundreds of boards and commissions locally here in your community, also throughout the state of California. And they need folks dedicated to advocacy for women and for girls, and those who are going to rely on evidence-based policy. So I would love to see all the boards and commissions filled with all of you, all of those boards and commissions in California overflowing with STEMness. So I'm going to pause here right before I finish and say, because I have a political background, I'm sure that there's an ask coming up for money. And I think there's already something on your table. The ask part is not my part, but I'm sure that Monica is probably going to be really nice about it when she gets to the ask part. I'm noticing all the 50-year signs everywhere. So I'm going to give you all a little challenge. I've already filled out my card, and it says I'm going to make a $50 monthly donation. And I encourage each of you to pick up your little card and do the same, so we can do a little 50 for 50, $50 monthly donation to celebrate the 50 years, because I'm thrilled that you're all celebrating 50 years here today. One of my organizations that I support, National Women's Political Caucus, also celebrating 50 years, so we're birthday twins, and I've done that for them as well. So if you grab those little cards, $50, make it monthly, you're welcome to check any of the other larger boxes as well, and be responsive to the ask coming up. But just something that, maybe you can think about while you're finishing up your lunch here. So I am so impressed by the efforts of Girls Inc. and by extension, all of you here today, to support such a fabulous organization. Let's go boldly into our future together as we witness what this next generation of young women is able to accomplish as they get the opportunity to dare mighty things. Thank you very much.